When I was in high school, I participated in debate, and in high school it's called the National Forensics League, the NFL. So you have a bunch of nerdy kids walking around saying that they're in the NFL, and nobody else understanding what in the world that is. And debate is very similar to the spelling bee. It's an insular world, high performing kids, helicopter parents. The debate program is a multi-million dollar program. You travel the country with invitationals, and there's a really high level of competition. So, it's been in my DNA for a long time, and it's always been in my interest to try to bring that world into one of the stories that I came up with. And it didn't hit me that I could essentially do that until I saw the documentary Spellbound. And I was watching Spellbound. It's very similar, the spelling bee world and the debate world. And I was watching these kids and I thought, they're a bunch of weirdos. And I remember being one of those weirdos. And I thought to myself, it would be really interesting if the grown up me could poke the young me, right between the eyes and say, you're such a weirdo. And that's how the idea started. I decided, yes, I need to figure out a way to get a grown man in with all these kids to mix things up. With any kind of rascally character that you come up with, what makes them interesting is when you start peeling back the layers. So, a character in a story can be offensive. He can be, the outright worst, but, as the story goes along, you learn a little bit more about him and you learn about his weaknesses, and that's what makes him interesting. And ultimately, that's what makes an audience want to root for him or hope that he succeeds because they can identify with his weaknesses. Guy has a very high wall built around him, and he doesn't want to let anybody, through that wall. And he's cagey and he's secretive and he has his personal directive. And it's not until both, Jenny and Chaitanya start to chip away at the wall, in two different ways that he starts to realize he's vulnerable. And that, therefore, then throughout the story, he starts to react to his knowledge that I'm becoming more vulnerable with these two people, and he starts to act out. As Guy does with everybody, he goes for the softest spot, and kids are obviously, they expose their vulnerabilities a lot more evidently than adults. That's what's so wonderful about kids is that they're a little bit more upfront and honest, and they present, their complete selves to you without even knowing that they do. And Guy completely capitalizes off of this, but for the most part, it's always a response to some prejudice that a kid has to him or some remark that the kid says to him, and therefore Guy feels completely entitled to, dishing it back to the kid. And so if you have a kid that's a little hefty, he's going to go after the weight. And if you have a kid that, feels like he's holier than thou, well, you're going to pull out the underwear and make this kid think that, his mom is having an affair with Guy.